Nice dress, she snickered, eyeing me from head to toe. Did you forget to upgrade your name tag too? The others burst into laughter, mocking me like they always had. I stood there, calm and silent, letting their words roll off me, until the sound of blades sliced through the air. Their laughter faded as a sleek helicopter descended onto the lawn. The doors opened, and the pilot stepped out asking for me, by name. That's when their smiles disappeared. My sister went pale. My ex sat down hard. The entire room fell dead silent, because just seconds before, a military helicopter had landed on our high school reunion lawn, and the man who stepped out, he saluted me. They had spent 20 years trying to bury me, but in that single moment, their world, and mine, changed forever. My name is Grace. I walked into our 20-year high school reunion feeling, well, invisible. I was in a plain navy dress, and it took about 5 minutes for everyone to remind me that in their eyes, I had never amounted to anything. The valet didn't even glance up. I murmured a thank you, clutch tucked under my arm, and stepped through the grand double doors of Aspen Grove Resort. Seriously, this place was like Versailles, just gaudy enough to scream that I didn't belong. Everyone was already inside. I could hear the roar of laughter, the applause, the clinking of glasses even before the concierge handed me my name tag. It just read Grace Cole, in this bland, generic font. No title, no distinction, no weight. Classic Chloe's touch, no doubt. What they didn't know was I still wore my West Point ring, hidden under my sleeve. That's exactly how I planned it. The main ballroom was like a theater, long tables and ivory, flowers, these ridiculous crystals, a 6-tier cake glittering on a pedestal. Up front, a huge screen showed a slideshow of memories, prom, debate club, cheerleaders, that class trip to DC. Chloe, my younger sister, was in half of them. I was in maybe 3. And there she was, already on stage when I walked in a red sheath dress that practically screamed, "Power!" Her voice poured through the microphone, effortlessly charismatic. And after 15 years at the Department of Justice, she purred, tossing her hair, "I'm proud to say I've recently been appointed Deputy Director for Western Cyber Oversight." She laughed. But I'll never forget where it started. Right here at Jefferson High. And of course, I have to thank my sister, who is with us tonight, for always being uniquely herself. The crowd chuckled, clearly unsure if that was a compliment. I didn't flinch. That was Chloe's talent, weaponizing praise. I found my name at a far-off table, table 14, right next to the buffet trays, practically a step from the exit. The names at the front tables were embossed in gold. Dr. Hartman, CEO Wang, Senator Gill, Chloe Cole. Mine? No centerpiece, just half-eaten shrimp cocktail on a shared plate. Then, from across the room, Jason Hart spotted me. My ex. He hadn't changed much. Still tall, still smug, still thought he was God's gift. He made his way over, drink in hand, suit perfect, and leaned in with a smirk that hadn't matured a day. "Becca," he drawled. "Still stationed in the desert? Or are you pushing paper in Kansas now?" I gave him a tight smile. "Nice to see you too, Jason." He laughed. "Come on, I'm joking. But seriously, didn't you study pre-law? What happened?" Before I could even answer, some woman in pearls leaned toward another guest and whispered, loud enough for me to hear, "Didn't she drop out of law school? Shame. So much potential." Melissa Zhang, from 3 tables away, caught my eye. She gave a faint, knowing smile. I returned it, unsure if it meant pity or solidarity. Probably both. The dinner crowd thickened. Waiters moved like clockwork, serving prime rib. Chloe stopped by, all theatrical hugs and sparkling teeth. "Oh, Becca," she chirped. "Glad you could make it. I almost didn't recognize you in that navy vintage." "It's just a dress," I said flatly. "Well, you always were practical." She tilted her head. "You know, we really should talk sometime. You've got so many stories, I'm sure." "Only the quiet ones," I replied. Jason came back, flanked by 2 other classmates. One, a tanned woman in a pale blue suit, squinted at me. Wait, were you in the army? That's right. I remember you left after sophomore year to enlist or something. A man behind her barked a laugh. Wait, you were in the army? So what? Like a clerk or a mess hall sergeant? Several heads turned. Some laughed. Jason looked amused. Chloe just stood there, saying nothing. I took a sip of water. The glass trembled slightly in my hand, but I held it steady. The air felt suddenly heavier, like gravity had shifted inside the room, but I didn't let it pull me down. I stood up without a word, adjusted the sleeve that hid my West Point ring, and looked at each of them with the calm I'd earned over 2 decades in war rooms and underground bunkers. I smiled faintly, quietly, and replied, "Something like that." Then I walked to the balcony, where my encrypted phone pinged silently. They saw a nobody in a discount dress, but I had once briefed NATO in that same dress, just under a military coat they never knew existed. The wind outside curled around the edges of the balcony like it was trying to eavesdrop. I stayed out there a while, my back straight, eyes on the dark treetops swaying above the golf course. The resort lights bled gold into the grass. But up here, where no one cared to stand, it was quiet. That kind of quiet was rare in my world. Inside, the clamor of success stories swelled again. Laughter, toasts, another slideshow framing sliding into view, Chloe with the debate team. Chloe in front of the White House. Chloe at Harvard. The door behind me opened with a hiss. "Jason, there you are," he said, already halfway through his next scotch. "You always did like standing on the edge of things." I didn't answer. He leaned against the railing, too close. "You know," he started, his voice casual, "you really used to have a future. Valedictorian track, debate team prodigy, Harvard law practically begging, and then poof, army." He laughed. "Still can't wrap my head around that." His laugh hadn't changed. Same clipped arrogance. Same need to feel one step ahead. It pulled me back to the last time we stood this close, senior year. The dorm hallway still smelled like burnt coffee and laundry soap. I had told him I had accepted West Point. "You're kidding," he had said, his jaw tightening. "The military? You're throwing this away." "It's not throwing away," I'd replied. "It's choosing something bigger." "Yeah," he snapped. "Bigger than me." And then he walked out. No goodbye, no call, just vanished. Now, 20 years later, here he was again, still resenting a choice that had nothing to do with him. "I didn't disappear, Jason," I said, my voice calm. "I just stopped explaining myself." He scoffed. "You always did like cryptic answers." I turned to go, but he caught my arm, gently, just enough to make me stop. "You could have been someone, Grace." I looked at him. "I am someone, just not someone you'd recognize." Before he could answer, the door swung open again. "Chloe, Jason," she called, that full breezy tone she used when she wanted to be overheard. "They're asking for the Golden Trio picture. Come on, for old time's sake." Her eyes flicked to me, and her smile widened. "Oh, Becca, didn't know you were still here. Thought you might have ducked out early like usual." Jason dropped his hand from my arm. Chloe approached, looping her arm around his like it had always belonged there. "Anyway," she continued, brushing a non-existent speck off Jason's jacket, "everyone's dying to know what our class's only DOJ appointee and its most successful real estate developer have been up to. I told them you two are still deciding who wins the power couple crown." She laughed, but there was something pointed in her glance at me. Jason chuckled awkwardly, clearly unsure whether this was flirtation or performance. Chloe's eyes sparkled. "And Grace, what are you up to these days?" "Still somewhere hot," I said simply. "I'm in transition." "Oh," she said with mock concern. "Not out of work, I hope." "I managed fine," I replied. "Just not from behind podiums." She tilted her head. "Always so mysterious." Her smile tightened, but I guess not everyone likes the spotlight. She turned, tugging Jason back inside, her heels clicking with satisfaction. I stayed there a moment longer, letting the wind thread through my fingers. The bar lights from inside painted slivers of gold across the floorboards. I wasn't angry. I'd spent too many years learning how to feel everything and show nothing. Eventually, I re-entered the ballroom. The room had shifted into after-dinner mingling, smaller clusters now, more drinks, looser tongues. Melissa was at the edge of a group near the bar, nursing a glass of wine and watching. I joined her. That was painful, she murmured. I smiled faintly. Which part? All of it. She replied, then added, You look better than them all, by the way. I doubt they'd agree. Doesn't matter. Truth doesn't need a majority vote. I appreciated her. She didn't pretend to know everything. Didn't rush to fill silence. She simply observed. Across the room, Chloe leaned in close to Jason, whispering something that made him laugh. When she caught me watching, she didn't look away. She just smiled. Didn't she used to follow you around like a shadow? Melissa asked. She learned to outshine me instead, I said. Before she could respond, a gentle hand touched my shoulder. I turned. Mr. Walters. He looked older, grayer hair, thinner frame, but his eyes were just as sharp as they were when he taught AP history. He wore a navy blazer, khakis, and that same crooked half-smile that used to precede a surprise pop quiz. Miss Cole, he said warmly. I was hoping you'd be here. I heard about your military service. I nodded. Thank you, Mr. Walters. You wrote a paper on asymmetric warfare in my class, he said. I still remember it. Brilliant work. I blinked. That paper had been a late-night act of defiance, written after a phone call with Jason had left me in tears. I remember, I said softly. He leaned in slightly, voice lower. Tell me, did you ever serve in Ghost Viper? I've heard things. They thought I disappeared into obscurity. In truth, I disappeared into national silence. I locked the hotel room door behind me and exhaled slowly, letting the buzz of the reunion fade into a faint thrum beneath the thick walls. The room itself was unassuming, faux crystal lamps, cream-colored carpet, a folded bathrobe on the bed. It looked like it could belong to any guest. That was the point. I slipped off my heels, crossed the room, and reached under the hanging navy dress bag. Beneath it, nestled inside a black hard-shell case with no markings, was the reason I still woke up every day with purpose. I flicked open the latches. The interior glowed faint blue. A fingerprint scan, retinal scan, voice confirmation. Cole, Grace. Clearance Echo 5. A soft chime. Then the screen lit up. Secure comms online. A flurry of data populated the display, threat indicators. Unresolved protocols. Project Merlin status. Active breach containment. I skimmed the latest assessment. 4 red zones. 2 possible internal actors. 1 breach point matching the blueprint I'd flagged 6 weeks ago. Still no resolution. A message flashed. Incoming call. Ellison. J2 Cyber Command. I tapped the screen. His face appeared, square-jawed, midnight stubble, eyes like he hadn't slept in 2 days. Ma'am, he said, not bothering with small talk. I've just come out of a debrief. Situation's changed. They want your eyes on the Merlin intercepts ASAP. I didn't blink. Joint Chiefs, unofficially. Officially, it's an advisory consult, but let's not pretend this isn't critical. We've got a NATO partner compromised, an internal chatter linking the breach to Phoenix Protocol files. A pause. Then his voice softened slightly. Grace, they need you back in DC by Monday. I stared at the blinking map overlay. 4 red zones. Yes, but there was a 5th just starting to pulse. I can't leave yet, I said quietly. Understood. But if this escalates, it will. It's already in motion. I cut him off. He looked at me like he wanted to argue but didn't. You've got 48, he said. After that, we extract whether you're ready or not. I'm sending intel briefs to your secure cloud. The screen flickered as the call ended. For a moment I just sat there, the glow of the case humming beside me. The hum had become a comfort. Not because it was peaceful, but because it meant I was still needed. Still in the fight. A chime. New secure message. Pentagon Forward Liaison. Subject urgent. Standing Authority update line. Direct extraction possible if urgent. You're the fulcrum. I closed the message. I already knew what it meant. If Merlin collapsed and the intel leaks spread to civilian grids, it wouldn't matter whether I was dancing in a ball gown or kneeling in a war room. I would be pulled out. The fulcrum wasn't a title. It was a tether. I stood stretched, then walked to the window. Outside, the lights of Aspen Grove still sparkled like a painting too polished to be real. I could hear music again. Soft jazz now, followed by a DJ's voice booming something about a class slideshow. 20 years ago, I'd sat in that auditorium with Jason, Chloe, and Melissa, listening to our valedictorians speak about legacy. I remember clapping politely, even smiling for the yearbook photo. I never imagined my legacy would be silence. 15 years ago, Ghost Viper deployed on a mission so sensitive we burned every scrap of planning material afterward. We succeeded, but at a cost. 3 agents never came home. Their names didn't make the news. I gave the final go order on that op. I was the youngest to do so. No medal, no citation, just a single line in an encrypted server. Operation completed. No attribution. Debrief sealed indefinitely. I carried those silences like medals no one could pin. Now they needed me again. I turned from the window and began to pack. Not much, just a case. 2 devices. An address uniform folded beneath a false bottom panel in my suitcase. My fingers lingered on the coat sleeve where a single silver star rested just above the cuff. I didn't plan to wear it yet. Not until I was ready. I had one thing left to settle before I leave. 48 hours. Outside, music from the reunion resumed. I looked out and murmured, "One last night in the shadows." I wore no medals, but I carried more scars than anyone in that ballroom. The ceiling of the grand ballroom shimmered with thousands of glass fragments, casting golden specks over polished tables and champagne flutes. The room buzzed with rehearsed nostalgia and curated success, like everyone was performing a role they had waited 20 years to play. The class of 2003 had aged into its power suits and practiced laughter. I sat near the rear again, table 14, flanked by 2 former varsity swimmers now in venture capital, and a woman who ran a skincare empire out of Beverly Hills. None of them remembered my name. They smiled politely, then turned back to each other. I didn't mind. It was safer this way. The band hushed. The MC, a balding man with a booming voice who had once been the prom DJ, stepped to the microphone. He beamed. "Our highlight of the evening, the 2003 Most Distinguished Alumni Award. The votes were unanimous this year. She's smart, accomplished, and a rising star in federal service. Please welcome Deputy Director Chloe Cole." The applause was thunderous. Chloe ascended the stage like it was built for her. Her scarlet dress caught the spotlight perfectly. She took the mic with both hands, pausing long enough for the room to still. She didn't look at me, but her voice reached every corner. "Thank you all. I'm honored, and a little stunned. I mean, I'm just doing my job, but I guess over time, we see who rises, who leads, and who simply watches from the wings." Laughter, measured, polite. She continued, "I want to thank my mentors, my team at the DOJ, and of course, my high school teachers, especially those who encouraged ambition over conformity. They taught me that serving is admirable, but leading, that's where real change happens." Another ripple of applause. She smiled as if she just solved the riddle, then added, "I think we all know someone who chose to fade into the background, and that's okay. Not everyone wants or can handle the light." I didn't move. My face didn't flicker. But I saw Melissa look at me from across the room. Not with pity, with something sharper, disbelief. Jason, a few tables up, stood with his wine glass raised. "To Chloe," he declared. "Our own Iron Lady. Proof that leading from the front beats hiding in the shadows. Unless you're peeling potatoes on a base in Nebraska." That got a laugh. Even from people who didn't understand the reference, they just followed the rhythm. Chloe smiled modestly, as though the toast embarrassed her. Melissa didn't clap. I looked at her again. She was biting her lip. The MC returned. Let's hear it for Chloe. And hey, any generals in the room tonight? No, guess not. Well, maybe next reunion, huh? Laughter again. I rose quietly. No one noticed. I slipped between tables, my heels silent on the carpet. Jason called out after me. Hey, Grace, wait. I didn't mean. I kept walking. There was nothing left for me to hear. The hallway was cooler, dimmer. Far from the lights and curated memories. I moved past framed photos of our senior year, homecoming, theater plays, awards nights, and into the vestibule where the air held less expectation. Outside, the night wrapped around me like armor. The sky above Aspen Grove was velvet black, punctuated by stars I hadn't seen for days. I took a breath. Then my encrypted phone buzzed in my clutch. Extraction cleared. H-lead 6 minutes. They said my life had amounted to nothing. But then the sky began to shake. I stood alone near the edge of the lawn, past the clusters of fairy lights and string quartets, past the perimeter where the photographers had stopped shooting and the voices had begun to soften into polite, well-oiled networking. Beyond the trellises, the night was quieter, cooler. My heels pressed gently into the damp grass, and I tilted my head upward to watch the stars. For a moment, they reminded me of the sand-colored nights overseas, of field maps lit by filtered moonlight, of a silence that meant danger, not dismissal. Behind me, the echoes of the reunion still clung to the air, Chloe's acceptance speech. Jason's wine-soaked joke. The MC's final laugh. In their eyes, I had exited the story already. Unimportant. Forgotten. I once told Melissa years ago in passing. I don't need them to clap. I just need them to see. I hadn't meant for that moment to arrive this way. The wind shifted. A low rumble started, soft at first, barely distinguishable from the ambient hum of generators and distant traffic. But it grew. Waiters paused mid-step. Someone looked up. A few guests glanced around, puzzled. Then the lights on the grass flickered. White dots replaced by harsh, concentrated beams from above. A sound cracked through the air like thunder splitting sideways. People gasped. Trays dropped. Glass shattered. Napkins flew. From the northern tree line, a dark form emerged, angular, exact. A military helicopter, matte black, slicing the sky with precision. Its rotor blades thundered as it hovered above the lawn, lights blazing into the crowd. Screams of confusion. Phones out. Someone yelled, "What's happening?" A mother pulled her child close. Jason shielded his eyes. Chloe's champagne flute tilted, spilling gold down her dress. The helicopter began to descend, rotors kicking up a cyclone of leaves and petals. Guests stumbled back as hair and ties whipped in every direction. The string quartet stopped playing. Cameras flashed, not out of joy now, but confusion, fear. Then it landed. The door opened. Colonel Marcus Ellison stepped out in full dress uniform, ribbons gleaming under the floodlight. His boots crunched the gravel path as he crossed the lawn, his pace high, unhurried. He didn't glance at the crowd. His eyes were locked on one thing, me. I didn't move. I stood straight, arms at my sides, the wind pulling slightly at my navy dress. For the first time that night, I didn't feel underdressed. I felt exactly as I needed to be. Ellison stopped 3 feet away, squared his shoulders, and saluted, crisp, deliberate, impeccable. Then he spoke, his voice projected over the stunned silence. "Lieutenant General Cole. Ma'am, the Pentagon requires your presence. Immediate briefing." The words hit the air like a detonation. Someone gasped. Another dropped a phone. A wine glass shattered. I heard Jason's voice behind me, barely above a whisper. "No." "What?" Chloe stumbled back a step. Her mouth froze open, her eyes wide and glassy. Melissa was the first to move. She stepped forward, breath caught, then whispered just loud enough to carry. "Oh my God, Grace! They all froze as Ellison said the words. Lieutenant General Cole. I had never spoken my title aloud in public, but now it roared through the silence like thunder. The last vibrations of the helicopter. Blades rumbled through the earth like an aftershock. The air had gone still again, but not silent. This was the quiet of stunned disbelief, of neurons failing to catch up to what eyes had just seen. Colonel Ellison handed me the folder, black, embossed, sealed. His voice dropped just enough for only me to hear. Target movement confirmed 2 hours ago. Pentagon wants eyes on intercept recommendations. Merlin's window is narrowing. I nodded once. Anyone dead? Not yet, but that won't hold. From behind him, I heard Chloe's voice crack through the frozen silence. Wait. Did he just say, General? All eyes shifted to her. She stood barefoot now, having lost a heel in the chaos, clutching her clutch like a lifeline. Her dress sparkled beneath the floodlight, but her face was losing its sheen fast. Grace, she repeated, voice rising. You're in the military, but I thought I was peeling potatoes in Nebraska, I said calmly. Jason stumbled forward, still gripping his wine glass like it might anchor him. I didn't know, he said. Becca. I mean, General. I had no idea. I thought you dropped out. Law school? West Point? I didn't even. He trailed off as the cameras started flashing. Melissa stepped beside me, her hands trembling. I don't understand how you hid this. I wasn't hiding, I said. I was serving. Somewhere in the crowd, someone started clapping. Just a few hands, then more. A ripple of confused, unsure applause rose and faded like an orchestra missing half its instruments, but it was enough. I took a step toward the center of the lawn where voices had started to rise in whispers, questions, fragments of disbelief. I didn't speak loudly. I didn't have to. Some people wear uniforms loudly, I said. Others wear them quietly. That doesn't make us any less visible. It just means we serve without needing to be seen. Ellison gave a nod toward the helicopter. Ma'am, ETA 1 minute. I turned to Melissa. Her eyes shone now, not with pity or confusion, but with awe. You really are the fulcrum, she whispered. I smiled faintly. Sometimes silence is a blade. Jason tried again. Becca, please, can we talk? I was wrong. I didn't see you. That's the thing, I replied without turning. You never tried to. Chloe stood off to the side, arms crossed, chest heaving. Her expression had frozen, not in embarrassment, but calculation. As the crowd shifted, phones raised, and whispers became captions, she quietly pulled out her own. One quick swipe, she opened her podcast app, tapped record. This is Chloe Cole, she began in a low, controlled voice. Live from Aspen Grove, where some very interesting truths are unfolding. Behind me, the rotors kicked up again. Ellison guided me to the helicopter, and the ground fell away beneath my feet. As I climbed aboard, flashbulbs snapped, faces blurred beneath the growing cloud of wind and debris. Some still clapped. Some stood frozen. Some pulled out their phones. As we lifted off, I caught one last glimpse through the window. Chloe, eyes burning, still recording. By the time my boots touched Pentagon ground, the internet had lit up, and Chloe's voice was already echoing across my inbox. The secure door sealed shut behind me with a pressurized hiss. Inside the skiff, the silence was dense, thicker than noise. The digital haze of Aspen Grove had been replaced by concrete walls, muted lighting, and the hum of threat matrices crawling across classified screens. I shed the last fragments of reunion perfume at the threshold. Here, it was sweat, data, and urgency. Colonel Ellison briefed me while walking briskly past rows of terminals. I was already scanning the contents of the secure tablet he'd handed over, logs from a breach surge near a Baltic server farm. Half-matched encryption markers. Suspected disinformation clusters tagged. Merlin adjacent. General Mono's waiting, he said. I didn't pause. We turned into the operations suite. At the end of the room stood Monrose, imposing, unreadable, his chest adorned with a full career's weight in ribbons. "Cole," he said, voice taut. "I've seen the chatter, both from inside the wire and outside. You're still good." "I'm focused, sir." "Good, because I need your eyes on the disinformation vector. This one's political and personal." He passed me another dossier. A projection flicked on behind him, maps lighting up in pulses, timelines crossing with hashtags. "Last 48 hours, he said. "Merlin's breach patterns correlate with the sudden viral trend involving your name. Civilian networks picked up a podcast that blew your profile wide open." I stiffened. "Chloe." "Correct. The episode's called My Sister, the Myth, released less than 12 hours ago. Already re-uploaded by 24 alt media channels." I didn't need to listen. I knew the cadence of her voice, the precision of her passive aggression. "We need to talk about military narcissism," she'd once joked years ago over wine. Now she was building a brand around it. Monrose continued. "She accuses you of weaponizing rank for validation. Calls your Pentagon presence a narrative move. Claims you ghosted your own family and now return in full uniform to steal the spotlight." "And the public?" I asked. "Split," he replied. "You've got veterans calling her ungrateful, but influencers are picking it up. TikTok edits, Reddit debates, hashtags trending, hashtag shady sister, hashtag in shadows had real grace, hashtag warrior or PR." I exhaled slowly. "Sir, I'd prefer not to engage." "You don't have a choice," he said. "The civilian info ecosystem has become a secondary battlefield. If someone's tying your name to Merlin, it's not just gossip. It's an opportunistic chaos vector." I nodded. "Understood." He looked at me, something unreadable flickering in his expression. "You know who you are. Just don't let them redefine it for you." Back at my desk in the secondary skiff hub, I scanned my secure inbox. There were over 90 media requests, Anderson Cooper, The Atlantic, even a satirical late-night host who wanted me to read mean tweets in uniform. I ignored them all. Below the requests came the other flood, comments, hate mail, DMs calling me a fraud. Accusations that I faked my rank for a public stunt. Some even said I was an actress, not a general. One video looped me stepping into the helicopter. The caption, "Deep State Cosplay." I rubbed my temples. A red alert pinged on my screen. Civilian disinformation sensor flagged Grace Cole as active target. Risk level 4.5. Initial vectors traced to pseudo-news outlet Citizen Circuit. Source uploaded hours after podcast drop. She hadn't just called me out. She'd fed me to the wolves. I stared at the screen. Chloe didn't understand what she'd unleashed. Or maybe she did. A message pinged from my personal line. "Melissa Yun, voice note, 107. I hesitated, then pressed play. Her voice came through low, fast. "You need to hear this, Grace. I just talked to Jason. He told me something about Chloe. Something she deleted years ago. I think it's connected to what's happening now. You need to know." I thought silence would shield me. But sometimes silence gives liars all the room they need. The windows of my temporary DC office looked out over the Pentagon's inner courtyard, but the view offered no relief. Everything felt too bright, too sterile. The walls were lined with framed commendations and a clock that ticked with military precision. But time didn't feel linear today. It bent, curled around memories I hadn't unpacked in years. Jason sat across from me, his knees bouncing slightly. He was wearing a suit, but his tie was loosened and his expression was frayed. "I should have told you sooner," he said. "I should have said something back then. But honestly, I didn't think it mattered." I watched him carefully. He looked like a man about to confess to something bigger than he could contain. "She came to me right after you enlisted," he said. "Chloe. She said you had asked the school to keep your name off the alumni honors list, that you didn't want the attention. I didn't question it." I tilted my head. "You didn't think it was strange?" He hesitated. "I did, but it was Chloe. She was always so certain, so composed. She made it sound like she was protecting your wishes. She even forwarded an email chain to the school board asking for the removal of your name. Said it was for consistency. That since you'd left the Ivy League path, it might confuse the narrative. The narrative? I repeated the words, slicing through my teeth like glass. He looked ashamed. I didn't respond to the thread. I didn't stop it. I just let it happen. I stood slowly, walked to the file cabinet behind me, and placed a hand on its cold metal edge. Something inside me wanted to scream. But training teaches you to wait, to observe, to strike with purpose, not impulse. She erased me, I said softly. Not just from dinner tables or party invites. She erased me from history. Jason looked down. That's not all. A knock at the door. Melissa stepped in, holding a folder with both hands like it weighed something sacred. I found it, she said, walking in. The nomination form. Your Medal of Honor file from 2018. I stared at it. I thought the board never submitted it. They didn't, she said, but not because of bureaucracy. She opened the folder and slid out a printed email, old, grainy, but readable. At the top was Chloe's name, her DOJ address, and her signature at the bottom. Subject: Medal of Honor Submission. Lieutenant General R. Cole. Note: General Cole has expressed a strong desire for anonymity. Please do not pursue further recognition without direct consent. My jaw tightened. I never wrote that. I know, Melissa said, but she had access, and she was your emergency contact at the time. I blinked. The weight of it pressed into my ribs. Melissa added, she told the nomination committee you'd withdrawn your consent. The board dropped it without ever contacting you. Jason's voice was hollow. She didn't just remove your name from a list. She removed your name from legacy. I turned away, swallowing a sudden sting in my throat. It wasn't just jealousy or rivalry. Chloe had crafted a version of me so small, so invisible that even my victories vanished under her approval. A soft vibration buzzed from Jason's phone. He checked it, frowned, then looked up at me. She's planning something worse, he said. Chloe's organizing alumni. She's calling it a restoration effort. A vote to block your new nomination from going through. Says it's all to protect the integrity of the alumni brand. I met his eyes. She's rewriting the past, I said. But I'm still here, and I still remember. Being forgotten is one thing. Being rewritten, that's war. The reunion auditorium smelled faintly of lemon polish and old carpet. The scent of manufactured reverence. Rows of folding chairs had been neatly arranged, adorned with maroon ribbons and tiny gold seals bearing the crest of the class of 2003. On stage, a banner read, Legacy and Leadership, celebrating 20 years of excellence. I stood at the back, arms crossed, my military blazer buttoned cleanly over a cream blouse. I hadn't been invited, but today wasn't about invitations. It was about presence. On the stage, Chloe adjusted the microphone. Her smile was precise, her movements rehearsed. She wore a tailored ivory suit and pearl earrings. To the untrained eye, she radiated poise. Success, she began, is not about medals or mystique. It's about showing up day after day, about building something others can trust. Applause rippled through the crowd, alumni, current students,